Weed, ganja, hemp, cannabis, marijuana, Mary Jane, reefer, joint, pot, cali weed, sensimina, sensimilla, purple skunk, gorilla, tampi, lamb's bread, blunt, or spliff. There are so many names for this versatile plant, and I'm pretty sure you can list a few more below. In Jamaica, she is most commonly referred to as weed or ganja. However, cannabis is the scientific name for the plant. From hemp to cannabis, ganja has been tied to the image of Jamaica for a long time, linked to Rastafari and even reggae. Some people see ganja as synonymous with Jamaica. It is somewhat of a stereotype because here's the thing, I myself never saw ganja until I went to university. Before that, I was more familiar with the scent than what it looked like. But ganja has a long history that goes all the way back before Christ. Now, this is part one of a two-part series on ganja. Today, I want to delve into the history and origins and explore some little-known facts about this versatile plant. And in part two, I will discuss how and why ganja was defamed for so many years. You're going to learn a lot in these videos, believe me, so watch them to the end. Research seems to indicate that cannabis was first found in 12,000 BC in Central South Asia. Then thousands of years later, in 8000 BC, seeds were found in Japan. Soon enough, in around 4000 BC, they started growing the plant from the seeds, which essentially means that cannabis was more than likely one of the first plants to be cultivated. They also found burnt seeds in Siberian burial mounds in 3000 BC. So initially, cannabis was harvested for its seeds, which was used as food and happened to be a rich source of amino acids. This was until it was discovered that the stalk of the plant was quite fibrous and could be used to make paper and other items. As a matter of fact, the word canvas may be derived from cannabis, as they have pretty much the same Latin origin. Written records from around 2500 BC or after indicate that in China the plant was used to make fabric and even shoes. Some evidence indicates that cannabis was possibly the first plant to be used to make fabric. In addition, the Chinese, who originally used bamboo to make bowstrings, soon realized that the hemp fiber was stronger and more durable. But what is the difference between hemp and cannabis? They are pretty much the same thing, except hemp comes from a strain of cannabis that has lower levels of THC. THC is the chemical compound that makes you feel high. Hence, the cultivation of this variety is more for industrial purposes rather than recreational purposes. So from food to fabric to paper to hundreds of other uses, it was inevitable that this versatile plant would also find itself in the field of medicine. Now, I could not discuss the history of cannabis use in medicine without mentioning Shen Nong, a Chinese emperor who is considered to be the father of Chinese medicine. His name appears in almost all the articles on this topic, as he is credited with the discovery of the healing qualities of the cannabis plant in around 2700 BC. Now, the well-known active chemicals in cannabis are THC and CBD, and they are responsible for the plant helping with a wide range of ailments. For example, helping people to sleep, to feel euphoric, to feel a sense of calm, to reduce inflammation, to relieve pain, and so many more benefits. It was used as an anesthetic during surgery in ancient times. It was used by Persians in 2000 BC. They mixed the hemp seeds with beer to help with a number of female ailments. While Egyptians would mix cannabis with honey, helping relieving period pains associated with inflammation and cramps. So what else did they use cannabis for? Well, researchers from Israel found cannabis residue on a 2,700-year-old shrine in what is now considered present-day Israel. This is seen as evidence that it was used as part of their religious ceremonies and is now considered the first known evidence of a psychotropic substance used in Jewish ceremonial events in the Kingdom of Judah. But I was interested in finding out what is the earliest evidence of humans consuming weed to get high. Because for every instance mentioned previously, there is no conclusive evidence that it was used specifically for that purpose. Well, a team of researchers found 10 wooden bowls at a burial site in western China that date all the way back to 480 BC. Each bowl was found with small stones in them, displaying evidence suggesting that they were exposed to extreme heat. Researchers believe that they were possibly used to burn incense. Of the 10 bowls, 9 were found to have trace amounts of cannabis. Many believe that the cannabis was either consumed through burning it and inhaling the vapors or simply eating it. But that, once again, is just supposition based on the evidence of the burnt stone. The earliest written evidence is where a Greek historian wrote of how a nomadic tribe used cannabis smoke to purify themselves after burying their leaders. He explained that they howled for joy during the ceremony. This may be the evidence I was looking for. Now, cannabis is a world traveler. It is believed that cannabis was brought to Korea by Chinese farmers. Soon it ended up in India, where it was considered to be among the 5 kingdoms of herbs which release us from anxiety. This is a quote from an ancient Sanskrit Vedic poem that's roughly translated to mean science of charms. Then cannabis took a trip. She went to the Middle East, then to Russia and Ukraine, then she hopped on over to Germany. Soon enough, she found herself in Britain, traveled all through Africa, then South America, and then on her way to North America. There are varying theories as to how and by whom cannabis was brought to North America. Some say Columbus brought it over, others say it came over from Africa, and yet another theory is that Mexicans brought it up to North America. When cannabis first arrived in North America, it was pretty much welcomed. I mean, farming hemp was actually endorsed in the 1600s, so much so that in 1619, Virginia passed a law basically requiring all farmers to plant hemp. This is mainly because the plant was used to make ropes, lines, sails, and canvas. And at one point, hemp even became a legal tender. Yes, actual money. Some researchers even believe that the Declaration of Independence was written on hemp paper. Some of the founding fathers were even said to have grown Indian hemp on their properties. George Washington, for example, had over 100 plants on his Mount Vernon plantation. By 1850, there were 8,327 hemp farms in the USA. In the same year, it received federal approval to be used as medicine. Now, this is also around the time when ganja came to Jamaica. Between the 1840s and the 1860s, cannabis was brought to Jamaica by Indian indentured servants. In the book Freedoms 1, Caribbean Emancipations, Ethnicities, and Nationhood, they speak of chillum pipes being placed on board the ships carrying the immigrants. This was done in order to make the trip more bearable. It is believed that this is how seedlings of the cannabis arrived on the island. In Jamaica, the word ganja, often used to refer to the plant, has Indian origins, since it comes from the Hindi word for cannabis, specifically derived from the Sanskrit ganja, which means hemp or hemp resin. Soon enough, the usage of the herb spread throughout society. It took root mainly in the working class, lower income, rural areas, and poorer sections of towns. So far, it seems like hemp was welcomed. So where did it all go wrong? Stay tuned for part 2, where we discuss how and why cannabis was defamed. This is part 2 of a 2-part series on cannabis. In part 1, we delved into the history and origins of the plant. Now let's discuss how and why Mary was defamed for so many years. Now, don't forget, if you like these types of videos, leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. Now let's pick up where we left off. As I said in the last video, in the 1850s, Mary's sister hemp was being farmed like crazy in the US, with 8,327 farms. This was also around the time when Mary hitched a ride to Jamaica with Indian indentured servants between the 1840s and the 1860s. Soon enough, its use became prevalent in the working class population in rural areas and in poorer sections of towns. But in 1883, the government began releasing warnings about the use of Mary, and so the propaganda began. But why are they giving Mary a fight though? Where is all this animosity coming from? Well, in one of the articles I read while researching this topic, it was proposed that plantation owners were against the use of the plant for leisure, as it was replacing the consumption of rum, thereby decreasing their profits. Now, that's a very interesting theory. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Now, remember, plantations manufactured sugar, molasses, and rum from sugarcane. But there are seemingly other reasons why they had a problem with Mary, and we will uncover those later. There was not much information on what was happening in Jamaica during this time to lead to people calling for her use to be regulated. Nevertheless, in 1913, a ban was placed on the use of Mary. This 1913 prohibition was backed by the rich whites and the Council of Evangelical Churches in Jamaica. Now, since mostly the poorer class of people were the ones using Mary, they were the main targets of the police. Soon another group would provoke the ire of the upper class. In the 1930s, after the coronation of the Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie I, a religion was born, sparked by the belief in his divinity. This was also somewhat of a prophecy fulfilled, since in the 1920s, Marcus Garvey, a Jamaican political activist and a staunch believer in black rights, had told his followers to look to Africa, where a black king shall be crowned. He shall be the Redeemer. Now, the Rastafari movement and lifestyle is focused around Pan-Africanism and the belief that this Western society and government is Babylon. The movement represented a distinct opposition to the oppressive government, not only because of their core beliefs, but also the fact that they incorporated the use of Mary as a religious sacrament. In 1941, there was an amendment to the Mary Law. With this amendment, even if it was your first Mary offense, you would get a mandatory imprisonment not exceeding a year. However, if it was your second offense, well, that could earn you 2 years in prison. Then in 1942, they didn't even need to find you with Mary. If you were found in possession of any pipes or other utensils for use in connection with smoking Mary, you could be charged with a criminal offense. From then into the 1950s, there were claims that using Mary would lead to acts of violence or just simply drive you crazy. But most of the population were not necessarily buying into that. That was until 1960, when during a protest, several British soldiers were allegedly killed by a group of revolutionists who were thought to be high on Mary. Were they really high on Mary? I don't know. Did they tell a lie? I don't know. But incidents like this were thought to be proof that Mary was indeed dangerous. Up until that time, if you were found with Mary or smoking it, the penalty was mandatory imprisonment. However, the judge couldn't give you more than 12 months and there was a possible fine. So, in 1961, the government made another amendment to the law, increasing imprisonment to 5 years if you were found cultivating, selling, or otherwise dealing with Mary. And there was no limit to the fine. By 1963, it was no longer referred to as the Mary Law. No, it was a dangerous drugs law. Over the years, there was built up tension between the government, the police, and the Rastafari community. The very fact that the movement was pro-Africanism and in opposition to white supremacy would have made the white upper class very uncomfortable and wary of the movement and the entire community, not to mention their use of ganja, which the population now believed made you violent. The Coral Gardens Massacre in 1963 is a culmination of all those years of friction and distrust between the government and the Rastafari community. Prior to the Coral Gardens incident, Rudolph Franklin was injured as a result of a dispute about land ownership. It is believed that Rudolph Franklin, along with other members of the Rastafari community, retaliated by burning down the Ken Douglas Shell Service Station. Casualties of the Coral Gardens incident included Rudolph Franklin, Lloyd Waldron, and Noel Bowen. The police were responsible for those. However, the Rastas were blamed for Corporal Clifford Melbourne and Inspector Bertie Scott, along with 3 civilians. I want to point out before we go on that over the years, Rastas have denied being the perpetrators of this event. They say that they were not the ones that did that. It was not members of the Rastafari movement. Moving on. As a result of this incident, several Rastafarians were beaten, imprisoned, and had their locks cut off. So you can guess what happened a few months after the incident. Yup. Another amendment was proposed. An act to amend the dangerous DRUGS Act was brought to the House of Representatives by Dr. Herbert Eldemeyer, who was the Minister of Health at the time. According to the minister, the bill is designed to do 3 things, mainly making it an offense for owners or occupiers of premises to use or permit to be used their premises for the cultivation of Mary, increasing the penalties for the possession of Mary and for the cultivation, selling, or otherwise dealing in Mary, and providing for the seizure and forfeiture of vehicles used in the commission of any offense against the principal law. During his presentation, the minister even made reference to an experiment done by the University of the West Indies where Mary was given to cats, and well, I guess the cats gained a little courage and attacked the dogs. When the story was met with laughter, he went on to impress upon them the seriousness of the matter, sharing that in his research, the immediate effect of Mary was violent psychosis, while the long-term effect was laziness. A debate ensued. It was not that the PNP was necessarily actively resistant to the proposed penalties. It was more so the fact that it was mandatory and did not allow for the judge's discretion. The opposition leader, Mr. Norman Manley, was quoted as saying, "And where you are going to deal with a drug like Mary and make it mandatory to send a person to prison for no less than 5 years for cultivating Mary without any regard whatever to the circumstances under which it is grown, then I think the country has a right to be told what is the extreme danger involved in this particular thing, which warrants so severe a penalty. The debate carried on for a while and ended with the bill being passed. The bill came into force on March 5th, 1964. It increased the penalty for first conviction to no less than 5 years and no more than 7 years if a person is found to be cultivating, selling, or otherwise dealing with Mary. For a second offense, it was no less than 7 years and no more than 10. If you were found in possession of Mary, then that would earn you no less than 18 months and no more than 3 years of hard labor. For a second offense, you would have gotten no less than 3 years and no more than 5. So basically, from 1964 to 1972, our young people were turned into hardened criminals. As Florizel Glasspool, an opposition member at the time, said, there should be no law that tends to make criminals of our people, and that is what I say on this bill. It did not intend to, but it will make criminals of them, because you cannot correct a young fellow by sending him to prison for 5 years, and he is mixed with hardened criminals who will make him more a criminal than he ever was before. In 1972, the Law Reform Mandatory Sentences Act came into effect and abolished mandatory imprisonment for violation of certain laws, including the dangerous DRUGS law. During the 1970s, Mary started to become more widely accepted. This was since popular musicians like Bob Marley, Bunny Wailer, and Peter Tosh were part of the movement. In 1976, Peter Tosh's hit, Legalize It, was released and very quickly became an anthem for proponents of legalization. In 2015, there was another amendment to the dangerous DRUGS Act, which came into effect on April 15, 2015. The amendment decriminalized the possession of small amounts of Mary and the use of Mary. This means you can have in your possession no more than 2 ounces of Mary. If you're caught with 2 ounces or less, you will not be arrested or charged. However, the officer may give you a ticket, and if so, you will have to pay $500 within 30 days. It is, however, a criminal offense if you are found with over 2 ounces, which means you can be arrested and charged, and if convicted, the penalty may be a fine, imprisonment, or both, and this will go on your record. According to the Act, the rules mentioned previously do not apply to the following: possession of Mary for religious purposes as a sacrament in adherence to the Rastafarian faith, possession of Mary for medical or therapeutic purposes as recommended or prescribed by a registered medical doctor or other health practitioner or class of practitioners approved by the Minister of Health, possession of Mary for purposes of scientific research that is conducted by an accredited tertiary institution or is approved by the Scientific Research Council, possession of Mary pursuant to a license, authorization, or permit issued under the DDA. Each household is now able to grow no more than 5 plants for medical or horticultural purposes. This amendment opened up the way for a new industry in Jamaica. But who does this now legal industry really benefit? According to this Jamaica Observer article, small farmers have complained over the years that although laws were passed to decriminalize possession of a small quantity of Mary and make way for the growth of a medical Mary industry, the requirements of the legal framework places them at a severe disadvantage. I'm eager to read your opinions on this matter. Are you happy that Mary was decriminalized? And who do you think really benefit from this now legal industry? Also, let me know in the comments what you would like me to talk about next time.